We're a hub for news, results, and CEO interviews focusing the junior commodities sector. We provide market analysis and perspective that will help position you for solid returns.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Market Mindset, where we not only look at the general economy and look at things, critically. We want to look for individual stocks and opportunities for people to make some money. And this has been a challenging year for sure. But we are thinking it's going to be a little bit more challenging moving forward. And certainly, we're in a stock picker world, and those companies that really stand out are going to have the best chance moving forward. And when we're covering that theme, as we always like to do, we always talk about BlackRock. And as we're coming into Christmas season, what a great time to talk about BlackRock and Larry Fink and his 2022 letter to CEOs. I think it's a perfect time to talk about something nice and light and jovial. And
like a Santa Claus, very giving, happy, jolly figure, right? Like that's the theme.
And I mean, a lot of people don't know BlackRock and Vanguard. Certainly in the last year, people have come more to terms with them because they are the originators and the sole driver, and Vanguard, which also owns part of BlackRock. Massive drivers, along with the UN and World Economic Forum, that drives forward ESG and a lot of the woke politics, all of the movement stuff that you see. They are the main drivers of that. But what's interesting is that this letter starts off, with this intention of stating that it definitely isn't political and it definitely isn't literally woke. So I found that very funny because it specifically and literally is both of those things. They are the main driver of those policies. But let's go through the actual letter itself.
Well, and I mean, like that opening is brilliant because it's like, it essentially is like, now everything you're about to hear sure sounds like we're going pretty woke and it's all about ESG and this isn't about capitalism, but let me assure you, it really actually is.
Yes, and it is, and it's a reframing of a type of capitalism. So, and we've heard this before. We've mentioned it. They call it stakeholder capitalism. And it's actually a great marketing name because, stakeholders in projects should be considered, and that also takes into account, stakeholders when you're looking, say, at a mining project. Some of the stakeholders are, say, a native band that might be using their property or nearby. There's a river nearby. You need to look at the stakeholders as far as the environment. So there's a lot of good in that concept. The issue, though, is, and we'll leave intentions out. I try not to think of this is their goal or this is their end goal, other than what they state. They are specifically a political ideological movement, even though they start off saying we're not political, we're not woke. At the end of the actual letter, it says capitalism has and we have a great chance to shape social views and society. So you're saying we're not political or ideological, but yet we also have the power to reshape society. So I found that kind of interesting, whether or not he caught that he kind of was contradicted himself. I don't know.
And I think he's trying to say it in a way of almost like we all together, when like the interpretation, when you understand what BlackRock is, when you can kind of see their track record and their investment strategy, you kind of know he's not meaning we. He's kind of saying we as in like all of us, but he's more so saying we as in us at BlackRock are going to be able to do this. Yeah,
and in part because I hear this as a stopgap. People will say, listen, just because they manage funds, it doesn't mean that they are the sole driver of ideas or any of that nature. People's money they're just custodians of the capital. And I say, sure, those are pension funds, and how many people with their pension funds are actively asking for proxy votes, or even know to cast a proxy vote on anything? And they make a point of saying that, like in here, like you should go out and ask for proxy votes and do this. They know nobody's going to do that. They also know no one can do that because they get on boards of companies. When they come in and make an investment, and they've done this with oil and gas companies, and they say, we're taking the following seats on your board. Otherwise, we're not making the investment in your company. Once they do that, they will fire presidents and CEOs like that. They do it all the time. How? Because people have ceded over all of their responsibility, all of their interest to just have an ETF or just have a fund company manage their money. And for the most part, well, that makes sense because we've lived in a period of time where a lot of people don't find it interesting. They get a good rate of return. Why wouldn't I just have someone else manage my money?
No.
What is interesting with that is that because when you do that and you cede over all of that power and all of that right, they then control all of that on your behalf. And they know most people aren't really interested in reading in depth, aren't really too curious about a lot of things. So it's clever because, you know, it's like me saying, listen, if you really are interested in mRNA, here's some studies you should read. No one's going to read them. Like no one's interested. They will read an opinion piece from a mainstream media who will interpret it and give them their beliefs and then just go with that. And that's not a critical thing about people. That's just because we've got limited time in our day, limited interest. Also, some of it's very technical and difficult. And most people are like, listen, I've got a family, I've got a job, I've got things to do. I don't have time to do that. So it's taking advantage of people's circumstance. And then, you know, they're ceding $10 trillion worth of power and they utilize it all the time.
Yeah, they certainly do. And they have the ability to. And kind of with what you're saying as well, is not just that, like, it's not just that people are busy in their everyday and don't necessarily have the time. It's that compiled with our brains are constantly conditioned to just be able to absorb very limited information and not look in depth into things, to just take when something's put to you in a nice little opinion piece, like you're saying, to just take that at face value. And this is what it is. This is someone else's interpretation. I don't have to do the work to figure this out, but that's a way that, you know, the education system, especially in the West, is set up to condition your brain to think and operate anyways.
Yeah. And I don't want to be too critical because the ESG thing, it absolutely is a Marxist extreme left platform. And that sounds weird to say when you're talking about capitalism, you're talking about a fund company driving change.
Yeah.
But it really is. It's a Bolshevik inspired ideology. That's certainly the S&G part. And that's fine. So I want to kind of remove that. But if you're wondering where this whole wokeism, all that, I mean, we have lots of research we're happy to share with people that kind of walks people through what's happened in the past decade between funding projects, funding universities, funding schools in order to change the education system. All of that is intentional, to say the least. Now, taking that aside, you can either say, well, I think that's a great thing, or I think it's a bad side thing. And that's a separate discussion, which we'll kind of put away. What we then get into is chances are, if you believe in that narrative, you believe in all the narratives that the mainstream news has out, and you're left with certainly the climate one. And, once again, I'm not interested in people's beliefs either way. There's enough science on both of those. I like to say that it's happening. There is obviously a change in the climate. That's not up for debate. It's, by doing the things that we're going to attempt, will it make any change? And for me, I'd say, listen, let's just leave all that aside, either the beliefs here and there, the modeling, all of those, leave it alone and say, we are putting trillions of dollars towards a certain path. They are. They're just going to. We can fight over the politics stuff. We can fight over the society stuff. That stuff will sort itself out, good or bad. But if you want to make some money, we know BlackRock is going to be putting money in certain ways, and with the help of your own governments throughout the whole world, this is going to be happening. So do you want to be able to participate or not?
Yeah, and do you want to follow that opportunity and what, and this letter does a good job of laying out some of the key areas that they see, opportunities for growth that talks about, like what different sectors can get the world to a net zero sort of thing, and talking about how it's going to take more than just what like, oh, let's everyone start investing in Tesla because they're going to save the world.
Yeah.
No, which we know isn't the case, but some people might in a limited scope think that that's going to make a big impact. And it goes into, I know this is something we have talked before, but he dives into how BlackRock does not plan to disinvest from oil and gas companies, and how that doesn't actually follow, which what is something that I have to give them credit to, because it shows that they're at least engaging and operating in some sort of reality. Because we know that you can't do any of this stuff overnight. So it's like someone who's been a chain smoker for 40 years trying to quit cold turkey overnight. It's usually not the best opportunity for success. You've got to find ways of how you can stagger and adjust over a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a transition period of time, and that's what is the reality. And that's the one part that I will give them. And also, once again, I don't know their intention. If their intention was to have things go as far woke and crazy as they have, maybe not. That's it may have gotten out of control. So once again, we can leave that alone. But the upside here is that, and right in it from his words, is engineers and scientists are working around the clock on how to decarbonize cement, steel, and plastics, shipping, trucking, and aviation, agriculture, energy, construction. I believe decarbonizing of the global economy is going to create the greatest investment opportunity of our lifetime. The next 1,000 unicorns won't be search engines or social media companies. They'll be sustainable, scalable innovators. So we're working with a bunch of those already. And we're excited. This is coming from BlackRock. We know when we talk to even TD Bank and other banks here in Canada that are waking up to the critical metals here, and how are we going to do this transition? They're finally starting to see, oh yeah, we need to be looking at this. So is our strategy, is it going to happen overnight? No, but we're positioned like BlackRock to say, some of our investments might take another year or 2 or 3, but they're going, I really think that's what we need to be looking for, is these 1,000 unicorns, not a basket of stocks or an ETF or a mutual fund, unless it's a mutual fund that's looking for these types of unicorns. And that's going to take a bit of work for people. And that's why I want people to get excited and go, listen, whether or not you are on board with the narrative or not, most people are excited about making money. And you could say, who is doing some of this great work? And at the end of the day, listen, what does it hurt if you could have a cement company that could also sequester carbon in it? I mean, it's just, to me, it's a win-win. You can help with as far as pollution, which is, I'm more interested in pollution rather than the carbon issue. And there are companies and we work with them as well, that are doing incredible work. And there's a chance for you to kind of put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, and as you start to see, like, big money like BlackRock, and then, movements from, both provincial and federal governments in Canada to, we recently talked about the E3 lithium investment by the Canadian government. So you're seeing all these things trending in a direction of starting to understand that this is the path of the pattern. We've even both had conversations with, friends of ours that are brokers at, pretty large firms and stuff like that are now waking up to being able to look at this sort of thing as well. So it's trending in a good direction. And this letter does lay out kind of a framework of, hey, here's where the opportunities are going to be. Here's where the chance to really solidify your economic position is going to be built as we try to achieve all these goals. And whether you're in Canada, the US, or somewhere else, it doesn't really matter, because a lot of the major, Western world is moving towards these targets and moving towards these goals. Andrew, you just muted yourself there.
Sorry. There's a wire.
There we go.
Thank you. So all of this is quite interesting, and I'm actually going to be starting a series here with John Highquay from Storm Crow Capital, and we're going to look much more in depth, not just at kind of what we're all starting to realize, the need for lithium and copper and all that. I think people that are following us understand that now. It's looking at the approach that being taken that doesn't make any sense. It's kind of this all or nothing, or like shut everything down and start doing this. And it's looking at things in more perspective of like, listen, it's great that you might ride your bike to work. It does nothing, I mean, as far as the environment in any way, shape, or form, but it feels good, and that's great. And there's a lot of emphasis on this type of push on Canadians or North Americans or the West about your usage of energy. It is almost nothing in comparison to what was happening in the developing world, in China, in India, in Africa, with pollution. And there's a reason for that. And that's what we're more interested in, is, once again, the politics of this. That's the disturbing part. That's the part that you should have pause and care for. But that's an interesting conversation in and of itself. But we need to look at the West as, the gatekeepers of creating technology that can solve a lot of this. And as a side note, we saw a big step forward in nuclear fusion just yesterday. For any of you that geek out on energy like I do, there was a great announcement in the US. So it's not huge. It's still, off, but they were able to create more energy than they put in. I won't go into the details of it. I'll spare everyone, but it's a big, big step forward. Enough that they had an announcement that went on all the major networks. And that is, congratulations. It's a big, big step.
Yeah, it's a huge step. And we won't dive too deep into it, but just for the ability to be creating more energy than you're putting in when it comes to something like nuclear fusion, at where we are right now. I know you and I did a show on this. I think it was about 6 months ago, where we kind of joked like, "Oh, it's always 10 years away. It's always 10 years away." Yeah. But that's a huge, huge achievement and milestone to move. And I know we both have very similar views on what nuclear in general can do to kind of help with this shift. So that's a big, big step and a big key marker.
Yes.
And it's something that I think you're going to see a massive uptick in investment in nuclear to kind of see continued R&D and continued advancement to see how far can you push this thing, because it is one of, if not the best option and tool that we might have at our disposal going forward.
Yeah, and even if we do solve the fusion thing in the next decade or 2 decades, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be pursuing nuclear right now, because we could be implementing that like China is. They've got 48 small modular reactors that they're creating for the year ahead. You can actually literally track and see, is that having an impact on carbon?
Yeah.
While you're going along. We don't have to just sit and wait for technology to solve some of these problems. We could be doing a lot of things as we're stepping forward. I think that's what the show that I'll do with John, we'll be looking at some of those things and saying, listen, there's a reason why they chose cars to start with. If they can convince the car market, and believe me, North America, the car market is a significant driver of the economy. Yeah. If they can convince people that that's the way to go, and once again, it doesn't matter if it's good for the environment or not. It's not a relevant question. If they can convince people to go that way and they adopt that, the rest of the infrastructure will then follow. And we see that they've seen that people are open to it. And why not? Like, I don't mind. I have no vested interest in a gas-powered car or what do you call it? A battery. I don't mind. I don't have an ideological push either way for either one. They're both probably great cars. Okay. So, if we switch, great. Okay, let's switch. But we're seeing the implementation of infrastructure now. And so they've gone into kind of step 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And so it's great to kind of see, it's a nice sort of validation of the big key themes of what we've looked at and talked about, all kind of being laid out and looked at in a very, kind of reasonable way. And sure, is there a bunch of stuff kind of circling back to the Larry Fink CEO letter? Is there things in there that I don't like? Yeah, absolutely. There's stuff that I'm going to disagree with, but a lot of the kind of key themes to it are things that make sense, things that we can see happening, things that need to happen if you're going to make these kind of shifts. And I think that's the kind of key focus to stay on with it.
Yeah. And I think for most people is you can vote with your money. That's your best vote. And we've seen woke companies going bankrupt, and that's great. Because there's enough in that ideology that is horrible, it's shocking, and it's destructive. I think in the West, we're going to sort that out. But that doesn't mean we don't take the technology and we work better with the environment and we are nicer to people and all those wonderful things. So I think there's an opportunity on a good scale that those political pushes that they're doing, they're going to sort themselves out. And I'm hoping that people can go, you don't have to take an extreme position to go, I'm right wing, so I'm only going to drive my truck and it's diesel, like, or it's gas powered. Like, listen, we can get on board. It's if it's cleaner for the environment, and I'm taking out the political carbon discussion. If it puts less pollutants out there and our air is a bit cleaner, cool. This is awesome. Good. Why not? Let's give it a shot. And that's, if nothing else, is why not give it a shot? Like, this is a huge transformation that we're going through. And believe me, I don't like the gatekeepers of this either. So we're pretty open. We're not big fans of BlackRock. We're not big fans of World Economic Forum or any of them. But that's not, there's, in every bad thing, there's some good stuff. So, and I think they have some good plans and some good things out there. That'll piss people off, I'm sure, that when they hear me say that. But there are some things that are okay. I don't trust them. I don't like them. I wish we could get rid of them. But I try to find something good in everything bad. So I don't want people that are really on board to think, oh my God, Andrew, like, they'll be all upset. But at the end of the day, the best way, if you don't want to be a part of it, go check your pension fund. Don't invest in any of the Vanguard or BlackRock funds. Request that your pension fund doesn't, and put a little bit more effort in. I mean, not necessarily go manage your money yourself, but there's other mutual fund companies. You don't have to give them all the power. So that's one thing you could do if you're totally against all of it. You can go find whatever ones. But this is the problem with when you have activist funds that are pursuing a political agenda. And a lot of it is under the guise of the science. Those are conversations that can go on forever. They do with scientists all the time. There is no consensus. I'll say that loud and clear, and that's also going to piss off a lot of people. But you don't get anywhere with some of that. I just kind of assume this is happening. We can make some money, and you can fight the fight that needs to be done. If it's about the environment and getting less pollutants, hey, that I'm cool with. Let's go and do that part for sure.
Yeah, look, if we can check those boxes and we're trying to meet these targets, regardless of what the impact of that may or may not be, that, like, you can't tell me that decreasing pollution and providing a cleaner environment and trying to do things in a responsible and sustainable way is a bad idea.
No.
Right? Like, I just at that part, removing everything else from it. You can't tell me that and making those kind of steps and that kind of progress is going to be a bad idea. And at the end of the day, I think that's the kind of focus to have.
Good. All right. Well, everyone, we're inching towards Christmas. We're going to be shutting things down next week, probably. We will have some more shows and some videos out. But we might squeeze in like a little happy holidays one here before. But we just thought we would come out here before we get into 2023, look at BlackRock again, because they're driving this boat. So so either get on or get off, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everyone, all the best, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Take care, everyone. Cheers.